Well, hey there, YouTube. It's Petey Two Finger, and we are going to straight to the internet. This book, Punks in Peoria. This is coming out in 5 days. It's coming out on the 15th. And it's a raucous look at a small city underground. Punks in Peoria takes readers off the beaten track to reveal the punk rock life as lived in any town USA. One of the strongest legacies of the hardcore punk movement in America was its emphasis on the local and the seeding of the country with self-supporting scenes. Synonymous with American mediocrity, Peoria was a fertile ground for the boredom and anger-fueled fury of punk rock. Authors explore the do-it-yourself scene built by Peoria punks, performers, and scenesters of the 1980s and 1990s. And what does this have to do with anything? Well, I'll tell you. The first punk band in Peoria was my neighbors, the Stuffy Brothers. We moved to Willow Springs when I was 8 years old, and it was our house. Then there was the Magura house, and the next house was the Stuffy Brothers. And I became friends with Chopper. I was friends with generally all of them, but Chopper was like my age, and then younger brother Kyle I was friends with as well. So from fanzines to indie record shops to renting the VFW hall for an all-ages show, Peoria's punk culture reflected the movement elsewhere, but the city's conservatism and industrial decline offered a richer than usual target environment for rebellion. So yeah, these guys were my neighbors. I was friends with them. I saw them follow along in the National Enquirer reading stories about Bigfoot and getting a kick out of all that. They were fans of that folklore, and then of course news of the punk rock explosion over the pond, and they followed along and quickly started collecting all those bands and recordings. They went through bands like AC/DC and Black Sabbath quickly, and it musically evolved into the hardcore and punk scene. And then Barry, he was kind of he was the second. Steve is the oldest. Steve played bass for Rights of the Accused, which is there's a movie, You Weren't There, the Chicago punk scene, 1980-1983, I believe is the title, and the Stuffy Brothers are featured in that. Their band Negative Element produced a EP, an 8-song EP, I think it is. Selections from the Punk Vault, Negative Element. You should read this. This is Barry's account. Barry wrote a fanzine. I remember telling Chopper the story of the Dancing Chicken, our trip to New York. And Chopper laughed out loud at the story. He said, "This is great. You got to tell my brother." So I retold the story to Barry, who had a huge grin on his face. And when I finished this soliloquy, that's my new favorite word, thanks to Pink Jimmy Photon, he asked me to write it up and that he would print it in one of his punk rock fanzines that he was photocopying. So they went on, they saved their money, they went to Version Sound and recorded this Yes, We Have No Bananas. This music is delightful. It has a thick sense of humor, suburban humor and rebellion. Songs like Police Beat on Me, songs with a theme against, just rebelling against whatever you got, against the right wing, Reagan, rebelling against video games, Pac-Man. They had a song, Anti-Pac-Man. So they had some serious songs, but it was a lot of humorous. It was a good balance, and they were unbelievably young. So Dave Grohl's Sonic Highways, the Chicago show, there is two photographs, I believe, featuring the Stuffy Brothers, them playing at the Cubby Bear. So yeah, this tells that story, and I'm familiar with all this music. These guys were my neighbors. They did a reunion. They had a band in the 80s. Supposedly Barry played in this Naked Hippie band. There's been a bunch of bands involving all three of these brothers. I took a Greyhound bus shortly after they moved and visited them. I remember seeing my first guitar pedal. I saw Digital Delay, and that blew my mind. They were doing a band called Electric Kool-Aid at the time, which was just the three brothers, and that evolved into Chips Patrol with a singer by the name of Bloody Mess. Now, Bloody Mess was a party animal where the Stuffy Brothers were straight edge, and Bloody was, like I said, he was a party animal. Here he is again. He was in contact with G.G. Allen and had G.G. Allen take the Greyhound bus down to do a show, headline a show at the VFW where these little punk bands were playing occasionally. So it was Caustic Defiance, I believe. Chopper, maybe at least one of the Steppy brothers played in that band. I'm not sure that night, but G.G. Allen headline. He shows up in a jockstrap with a cape, and he's jamming the microphone into his and farting into his jockstrap, and farting over the PA. He had eaten entire box of X-Lax, so when he gets on the stage, he defecates. It turns into a literal shit show, and all hell breaks out. The police are called. There's feces flying everywhere. People are running to their cars, getting feces thrown on them. The whole town, it just erupted into a virtual shit show. And that's this article. You should check this out. It's called Shit Happened. G.G. Allen. You could just type in G.G. Allen and VFW, and you'll find this. And this has the tie-in because Caustic Defiance was the opening band, and that was one of the Steppy brothers played in, and I think it was Chopper played in Caustic D. They were talking about the Caustic Defiance girls when I went out there. Their parents built them a half pipe in their yard as condolence from taking them out of Chicago, where they were building a scene in Chicago, and then their dad had to move because his job transferred him. So this half pipe created this scene where local kids would come and skate. They would do this thing called bum tagging. And this is my memory of it. I only heard about it. They would get a roll of stickers. One of the kids worked at a grocery store. Like this sticker would say hot, and you would put that on Italian sausage in the meat department. So they had this roll of neon pink stickers, and they would go skating downtown, and they would go, hey, buddy, when they saw a homeless guy, and put a sticker on him, and then they could tag the migratory patterns of the homeless. Because Peoria was in decay, there was a lot of homeless winos. And this was just part of the Steppy's sense of humor. They loved reading the National Enquirer. I remember the older Steppy brother had the younger brothers reporting to the kids in school for weeks about Bigfoot sightings in the woods near their home. He had purchased a Bigfoot costume, and then they rallied all these kids to come to show them the footprints. And of course, the older brother came running. So they were like pulling like hoaxes and pranks, and then they got into this punk music and developed these bands. This book is coming out in 5 days, Punks and Pure. You can check out this music. These guys were my neighbors. Growing up to them was just an absolute treat. So I'm hoping to do something special, but I don't want to spoil that or talk about it in case it doesn't happen. You can check out You Weren't There. Chicago punk scene. That's a great movie. It's kind of hard to find. I would definitely recommend you going to the Punk Vault and reading about Negative Element and checking out some of this music. There is, if you go on YouTube and you type in Negative Element, you can check out the full EP. Yeah, I don't want to get tagged for... This is stuff I've never heard. Fugitive Family, Plain Truth, Final Solution, Lice and Flies. Okay. Formed in Northern Virginia in the 1980s. Okay, this is... Excuse me, guys. How did that come up? This is a mixed video. Here we have Negative Element live at the American Social Club. They did a reunion here. Anti-Pac-Man. So yeah, there is some stuff that you can check out on YouTube. Whatever happened to Elmer Fudd? I believe that was something that Barry actually said. They thought it was so funny that they made a song about it. The one story that I will tell, and I've got many great stories about the Stuffy Brothers, and I would encourage you to take a look at this stuff and read about it. My theory was that the active ingredient was Mr. and Mrs. Stuffy were cool. It wasn't some weird thing where these kids called their parents by their first name or they were friends. You hear about suburban families having all this abuse. It was just a middle of the road. I mean, the dad coached them in little league when they were young. They developed a taste for good rock and roll, and then that transmutated into punk. And they were there, and they were straight edge, and they had their own belief system, and they stood for something, and they had a great sense of humor, and they were just a great American family. And that was all enabled because their folks were just really good, cool people. And I loved that family. I really did. They were the coolest. So I'm hoping to do something a little bit more and share that with you guys. I don't want to give it away, but you should learn about this band, about this family. They're in that movie. You can check out the Chicago episode of Sonic Highways by Dave Grohl. They're in that. There's another movie called You Weren't There, Chicago punk rock scene between 1980 and 1983. That's really good, and they're in that, and there's other people that talk about them. Because anybody who ever was or anywhere in the same town with these people, you knew who they were. They were that family that had too many boys. There was just too much testosterone. But they weren't going to they weren't getting locked up. They weren't dealing drugs. They weren't beating up their girlfriends. They were in a band. And that is about the most honorable lifestyle choice one could make from where I sit. I always admired these people. And yes, they were weird. They were different. They were not your average American family, but they were magnificent. And they leave behind a great legacy with this music. I mean, I remember them loading up into the station wagon with these huge smiles, laughing and giggling when their dad was taking to drive them to the studio to record their first EP. I'm sitting on my bicycle going by, and what a memory is that. But the story I wanted to share with you guys is Barry sitting in the basement, more than likely dining on a Tombstone cheese, or was it pepperoni pizza, playing the Atari 2600, probably Miss Pac-Man. Barry, a master of Miss Pac. They actually had a song called Anti-Pac-Man, which was their hit off of that first EP. Now, Mrs. Steppy up in the kitchen, the phone rings. She says, "Hey, Barry, there's some guy on the phone who says his name is Jello. He wants to talk to you." And the story is Jello Biafra had gotten a hold of one of Barry Steppy's hand-photocopied, handwritten fanzines and had called him at home to let him know, "Hey, I heard you're starting a little scene there in the west, 15, 20 miles west of Chicago in the suburbs, and I wanted to tell you what you're going to be up against is the world. It's it, but stay strong and keep the faith." This is my recollection of the conversation. I only heard about this later, but yes, Jello Biafra called Barry Steppy at home and told him, "Hey kid, good on you, and keep up the good work." Which, I mean, that says it all. I'm here trying to sell you on looking up some of these articles and checking out some of this music. Jello Biafra called these guys at home, and they were my neighbors, and I loved that family. I'm hoping to bring something much more interesting and in-depth soon. We got to see if that's going to work out, and stick around for more information on this. In the meantime, I would definitely recommend you check out this music, and you can pick up the book. The book is available. Alana's Dream is the record album. Okay, so let's go over there. This is a Chicago-based record label. And Articles of Faith. I know Steve played in, Negative Element, 1983. Steve, Rights of the Accused. This is Steve. There he is. And I remember ROGA playing a show about 2, 3 blocks away from my house, and it seemed like about 4,000 cars being there and the police coming and shutting it down. And I remember it was loud. I didn't go back there. I to this day I didn't know them. I'm sure I would have gotten in, and that's like one of my only regrets. Not seeing Frank Zappa and not sneaking into the ROTA show. PD's life regrets. So that's the story of the Stuffy brothers from their little wimpy BMX riding neighbor, annoying kid that hung around. That trip that I had out to Peoria was one of the funnest things I did. You know, it was like kind of on my street. It was like the Steppies were there doing their thing, and then there was my brother, who was the leader of a small clique of kids, where it was much more militarized and top-down pecking order of let's beat the shit out of the little guy. And so it was just a breath of fresh air hanging around the Steppy family. They were just the absolute coolest people. And I miss them. Just be yourself. So check it out, Negative Element. I would like you to go over and read this. Is really entertaining. You can just type in Gigi Allen and VFW, and that'll bring you to this story. This is the first time Gigi Allen defecated on stage. You can also check this story, the story of Negative Element, as told by Barry Steppy, and this is on the Punk Vault. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. Take care of yourself, hug your pets, be nice, and peace.